our panel today. I'd like to introduce our panel today, and I'd like to first introduce our Chief of Police for Oxnard, for the City of Oxnard. That's a big job, folks. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in Oxnard. This man has a big responsibility. He's an Oxnard High School class of 1984 graduate, Police Chief Whitney. Miss Botello, are we going to show Miss? Yeah. So we're going to show a little bit of. There he is. And then is there one more? One more. Yes, there is. Yes. Yes, and we're going to speak with each of these. You know what we'll do is we'll allow each of them to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll come back around for our panel questions.
Thank you, sir. So you guys know you're not here by accident, right? You guys are seen as the leaders in the school. Your teachers chose you for a reason. They didn't bring any slackers in here, right? You guys are the ones. I love that. Step it up. It's a good program. When I come to Oxnard High School, I always feel like I'm coming back home, because as the instructor said, I graduated in 1984. None of you guys are even alive. Maybe not even some of your teachers were alive then. But for me, it seems like it was just yesterday. It was some of the best times of my life were here at Oxnard High School. I learned a lot. Hopefully I have a little bit of wisdom. I have kids your age. Hopefully I have a little bit of wisdom that I can share with you. And how much do I get to talk? Okay. One of the big things I want you guys to know is we support you guys. How many of you guys, I should have asked this before, how many of you guys know that we support you at the Oxnard Police Department? We want you guys to be successful. Hopefully by the end of, hey, Law Academy, raise your hands over there. Come on, guys. There you go. All right. So we support you guys. We want you to be successful. Know that you have friends in the city, friends in the police department. Who's got the toughest job around? Who's got the toughest job in the city? Not us, not the police officer. The teachers do. Why don't you guys please give your teachers a hand, please? Hopefully I'll get to talk a little bit more later. Just want to let you know I graduated from Oxnard High School, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. 3 of them are older than me. All 5 of us graduated from Oxnard High School throughout the years. I went to school with one of your instructors. Won't mention his name because I don't want to age either one of us. And then hopefully I get a chance to talk more again later. And hopefully we get to see Officer Nick Curtis doing yoga later next week maybe. What do you guys think about that? Today.
Our next panelist that we'd like to introduce is Detective Crystal Walker.
Thanks for inviting me out here today. This is my bread and butter actually for the police department. I'm the crime prevention detective for the city of Oxnard for the police department, and I go out and I talk to older people, I talk to younger people, I talk to little tiny kids, I talk to business groups and churches and everything. And so this is actually exciting for me. It's one of the biggest groups that I've had. A little bit about me. I'm not from here. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. And I came out here I want to say it was about 2000, moved out here, and I applied with the police department. First time I applied, I got it, thank goodness. And for the next 5 years, I was actually in patrol. I worked patrol in 2 of the busiest beats of the city on the weekends, overnight. And I was usually the only female and the only bilingual person on the shift. So I got a lot of experience. The next 5 years, I actually worked as a district officer in the Colonia and the Lemonwood areas. And it's not bad. Back in the day, probably, but it's really not bad. The people are actually really, really welcoming, very awesome people. They just have a couple little issues that were going on. But it was amazing. The only thing was is that I did it in a very focused area. Now, for these past 5 years, I've been doing it all over the city. And again, I'm very happy to be here to help everybody out, help out Ms. Boteo. We go back a few years. And any questions that you guys have about anything that I do, anything that I can do for you, and it doesn't just have to be about being a police officer, it can be about anything. I'll do my best to help you. Pictures up here, I was in first grade, so I'm about 6 years old right there, and I was thanking Melissa for using that picture because I have all my teeth. And then this one was this past, the 28th, it was our Halloween Spooktacular. We had almost 1,200 people at our station, and it was one of our events where it's community engagement and crime prevention. So while you went through the little haunted house, we made sure to give you candy, but we gave you crime prevention information as well. So it was an awesome event, and it wasn't just for the little kids, so you guys can all come out as well and talk to us. And thank you very much. So I hope to hear your questions later.
Our next panelist, former Fremont Falcon, 2001 Oxnard High School graduate, graduate of the University of Southern California, USC, and your campus police officer, unfortunately in his last year as our campus officer, Officer Nick Curtis.
Guys. Yeah, I'm Officer Curtis. Tall. You guys probably see me around campus a little bit. Like Mr. Ricky said, I went to Fremont. I grew up around here. I went to Laguna Vista. I went to Ocean View. I went to Fremont. After Fremont, I came here to Oxnard. Mr. Ricky probably didn't tell you, but he was my basketball coach when I was at Fremont. I went to school with Miss Ricky, Mr. Compost, so a bunch of the staff. We go way back. Before I was a school officer here, I was on patrol for a few years. I did most of my patrol shifts on the south side. If I was on the south side, I was usually in either Lemonwood or Colonia. So I didn't spend a lot of time patrolling up here, but after that I came here and I enjoyed my time here, but unfortunately, yeah, this is my last year. But it's been fun and I appreciate you guys, so I had a good run.
And our fourth panelist is the Director of Community Affairs for the Oxnard Police Department. Not everyone who works in the police department is a police officer. There are many jobs that are related to policing and community service. Our fourth panelist, Director of Community Affairs, Ms. Melissa Valdez.
Good afternoon, everybody. As your presenter mentioned, my name is Melissa Valdez, and I've been here in Oxnard now just over a year. I actually grew up in LA County, born and raised in Montebello, and it's been really exciting to get to know Oxnard and the community. It's been a busy year. I had the opportunity to go out to a lot of different schools, but as Crystal mentioned, we work together a lot, and this is probably my biggest group. So it's exciting to be able to meet so many of you, and I see a couple familiar faces in the room. Two of the girls we were able to work with through the Law Academy, but I'm a graduate of the Cal State system, so I went to Cal State Dominguez and Cal State Long Beach, Go Beach. Got my bachelor's and my master's in public administration, and really began my career in public service at the age of about 18, and I've been working in public service for the last, I won't age myself, but the last, for a while, probably the last 12 years, so it's been great, and I just want to encourage everybody, sometimes you may not see your career as it is when you're in high school. I wanted to be a marine biologist and work at SeaWorld. And when I got my first job as a rec leader, I realized how much I enjoyed working with people and serving the community. And that really led me into my career of public service and eventually working for Oxnard PD, which I'm very proud to say that I do. So I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. And some of you may or may not remember, a year ago today, we were in a filled auditorium after the election last year and what I have seen in the last year is I have seen a bigger engagement from the part of kids looking at the world and trying to figure out their place in it. And what we try to offer with the speaker series, and what I think our panel offers in presenting local kids, for the most part, who are in the community and who have grown up, is give you a vision of where your future can take you. And I've seen attitudes in this community change, because you guys may or may not realize this, but when it comes to juvenile justice and the philosophy of how policing is done, when I was younger, the attitude was if a child does something wrong, you punish him. You lock them up, you scare them, and then they got to figure out how to get it right. And some of you, and I know from some of the kids I work with in here, some of you have had experiences in the justice system. But I wanted to ask our panel about juvenile justice. And when you see kids the ages of 15, 16, 17, how are they being dealt with in terms of law enforcement? Has that changed? And if you could share any of your experiences working with young people in your position of law enforcement.
Mr. Bricky, that's a great question. I could talk about that question for an hour. One of the reasons why we like to hire local people, I like to hire local people, is you understand the community. I didn't get a chance to mention earlier, I went to Ramona Elementary School, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. I was in the Colonia neighborhood. I was a mama's boy growing up. Before school, my parents were, my dad worked construction, my mom stayed at home. I had like very little exposure to the real world. Went to Ramona School, suddenly I'm like a social butterfly. I have all these friends, right? You get exposed to the world, it's super cool. From there I went to Sierra Linda, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Again, everything's good, everything's easy. And then Fremont, I went to Fremont, my bubble burst a little bit. Now suddenly you get exposed to gangs. Hadn't been exposed to that in my first 6 years of school. Suddenly some of my best friends at Ramona now are involved in gangs, and I don't understand it. I lived in the north end, I didn't live in another part of town. When I started, but I'll say, growing up, junior high school, I was in a few fights. It was always defending myself, but I was involved in a few fights, like what happens in school misconduct. We didn't have officers in schools at that point. Then in the 90s, we started putting police officers in schools. And what happens when you put police officers in schools, or police officers anywhere? What happens? One of the things they do is they enforce the law. That's our job, is we enforce the law. There's a lot of like education code violations that you guys could be committing like every single day. Well, in the old days when I went to school, was just school misconduct, school misbehavior. But you put, and this wasn't just Oxnard, it was nationwide. You put police officers in schools, you start enforcing the law. So as Mr. Bricky was alluding to, was talking about, in the 90s into the 2000s, most police departments started making more arrests. That's what officers do when they enforce the law. Give you a citation, maybe take you to juvenile hall. So we went through that in our police department, just like every other city in the country did, because that's what police officers do. Well, we learned from that. We learned from it, and what we learned, and I'll tell you, I'm pretty proud of it. Our department was on the leading edge in our county, in our state. We got calls from a lot of different organizations, activists in the state, throughout the country. Hey, what are you guys doing in Oxnard? One of the things we started doing, we stopped criminalizing school misconduct. So if there's school misconduct, that's handled with the dean, with the principal. If it's criminal in nature, then police officers get involved. I don't want, Officer Curtis doesn't want to be the enforcer on campus. We want you guys to look up to Officer Curtis as a mentor, as a positive role model, as a guardian. Unfortunately, sometimes he does have to enforce the law, but hopefully that's a sufficient answer.
We appreciate that greatly. Also, when it comes to, we had, Ms. Botello, we have a video that we were going to show, don't we? And we're not going to do that?
We want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A.
Okay. It's a quick video. Is that, you want to show it, Ms. Botello? What's that?
You wanted to.
You guys want to see the video? Very democratic.
If we could also, as we're going, we're going to have plenty of time for questions from you guys as well. But if I can ask Community Affairs, Ms. Valdez, could you explain what your job is in terms of community affairs and what you have experienced?
Sure, I'm gladly. My job has two parts. So one part of it is public relations related, so dealing with media, whether that's news stations or preparing press releases, or social media, so Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I manage those accounts and keep our public notified about what's going on, whether it's reporting on something that happened, maybe it's a major event like a traffic collision, or about positive things that we're doing. So when I leave here, I'm going to post a couple of photos from today. So it's about being able to push out positive information to the public. And the second half of that is community engagement. So helping coordinate events like Coffee with the Cop, community check-ins, park walk and talk, events out at schools. A lot of that coordination comes through our office. In addition to that, I guess there's three, crime prevention. So Crystal and I work together on that closely. Another thing that I do is regarding social media would be creating videos like the one that you just watched. So if you like to talk, if you like being out in the public, if you like meeting and greeting people, I think a job in community affairs is something that you might want to look into.
Our next question is for Detective Walker. We've seen a lot of videos over the last 5 years, especially since the advent of cell phones and cell phone technology and recording devices. And obviously in the city, I'm sure I wanted to ask, is that something that the use of recording devices, two parts. Number one, has that affected the way you do your job in any way? And the second question that came to me from actually one of my students is, have you ever seen some of these videos that have been shown in some of these larger cities, some of these national incidents, and had any reactions to them that you would like to share with us as a law enforcement officer?
First and foremost, you always have to take those videos with a grain of salt. You see one perspective. You see it from the way the camera is facing. You don't see what happened on this side, you don't see what happened on that side, behind it. And sometimes those videos can be edited to where you only see the specific incident that person that's putting out the video wants you to see. You have to take in the totality of circumstances. One of the biggest cases was, of course, Michael Brown and Ferguson, when they put out certain things on social media, and everybody said, oh my goodness, he had his hands up and this, that, and the other. I'm not talking about yes, no, what was right and what was wrong. I'm just saying, when stuff like that comes out, you have to be very cognizant of the fact that sometimes what's being reported might not exactly be what happened. You need to wait till all the facts come out. Now, unfortunately, as with police departments, we can't put all that information out right away. It's an ongoing criminal investigation. Sometimes the events aren't unfolding at that moment that the video or whatever information came out. So we can't give you that yet. We're not trying to be secretive. We're not trying to hide anything. But for purposes of court, for purposes of officer safety especially, we have to, cut back on some of the information. Just like you guys have families at home, so do we, and we want to get home, so we got to make sure that that information is curtailed. What was the first question? I apologize.
First question was about your reaction to the videos and how they affected your daily, like officers on patrol, and the recording, has that affected the police behavior from your vantage point in any way?
Me personally, myself, I get videotaped all the time, and people record me, and you know what, I don't care, because when I wake up in the morning and I come to work, I don't think to myself, oh, I'm going to go violate somebody's rights today, or I'm going to go beat somebody down today. That's never been anything that I've ever thought of. So my behavior, aside from maybe some of the bad words I might say, and I apologize if I do say one, sorry, Chief, but other than that, I don't watch my behavior, because I don't intend for anything that I do to be offensive, or for me, like I said, to violate somebody's rights, or to do something that's against the law. Now, as with any job, that you have some people that try to do their job to the utmost, and others that, kind of toe the line. And in those cases, I'm sure that because we wear body cameras now, and other people are filming us, that it kind of curtails some of that behavior. So, I hope I answered that in a nutshell. So.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, last year, 2016, all of our patrol officers, they now wear body cameras. You see a little box on their chest area. Those are body cameras. So all of our patrol officers wear body cameras now. So every enforcement contact that they have with residents is recorded. So you guys will probably see that.
And before we get to the student questions, of which we're going to be asking those in just a bit, I wanted to ask Officer Curtis, in your years here at Oxnard High School, as they come to a close as our campus officer, what are some of the experience, is there a particular experience that sticks out in your mind as one that you learned from, one that made you sad, one that made you gratified? Is there anything in your position as campus police officer that really sticks out and resonates as an experience that you can grow from, learn from, or that just kind of touched your heart?
Excuse me. I don't know how many or what grade most of you guys are in, but I want to say in the past few years we've had a couple of students commit suicide here. Some of our students have committed suicide. Each one of those situations has affected me, because I usually find out about it pretty soon before I get to school, or usually right after it happens. And most of the cases with the students involved, I've had personal contact with those students. So I can say that definitely has affected me, probably the most out of anything since I've been here. Just seeing that, somebody your guys' age, so young, they get to the point where they feel like they can't, go through it anymore, and they take their own life. I just want you guys to realize that, in any situation that you get in, it shouldn't be that bad where you feel that there's nothing left for you to do to get to that point. I don't want to be real somber right now, but I would say that definitely has affected me the most in my time here.
Absolutely. I think that we all appreciate the intensity of the job. We said that thing earlier about no cell phones, but Police Chief Whitney, if anything happens in the city, if there's any kind of shooting or whatever, he has to be available at all times of the day. So I would imagine you sleep with your phone next to you on.
Oh yeah, getting text on activity now.
And that's a part of the job. So what we want to do is, what we really look forward to is hearing questions from our audience here. And so, we got a line. Yeah.
Thank you guys for being such an attentive audience. If you have a question for our panel, I'd like you guys to very, calmly walk up and around and kind of meet me down here so that you can use, we only have one mic. So come right here and we'll form a line so you can pose your questions to the panel. So whenever you're ready.
Extra credit.
That's right. Hey, no kidding.
Alright, so I know some of you might be shuffling. Actually, let's kind of line this way so that we're not blocking the view. Excellent, thank you so guys. And if you would
I think you should get extra credit because I've been really quiet.
Alright.
I think you should get extra credit for that.
Alright, so let's be, again, respectful and attentive as our classmates ask their questions.
Hi, my name is Max Johnson. Two parts of the question. One is, how hard is the police academy? And two, what is the favorite part of your job?
Yeah, great questions. First one was how hard is the police academy? It's actually harder to get into the academy than to get through the academy. I tell people, if I were to ask, and I know not everybody wants to raise their hand, but how many people want to be police officers? Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you guys. What about civilian employees? We have 250 officers, 150 civilian employees, so raise your hand. The hardest part is actually getting into the academy because you got to make the right decisions. And I tell people, as soon as you know what you want to do, be smart about that, how you get there. 30% of the people that take the written test aren't able to pass it because I don't want to stereotype, but especially men have a harder time with reading comprehension and grammar. If you know, and that wasn't my strong suit in high school, if you know you want to be a police officer, that's part of the test. It's a written test. Start working toward improving in that area. Ask your English teachers, take a remedial class after school. So the hardest part is getting into the academy. If you get into the academy, like 95% of the people make it through the academy. So in addition to being smart about it, preparing for the test, start making the right choices. You know, we just last month interviewed somebody that had wanted to be a police officer for since 5 years ago, and that person used drugs the weekend before the interview. Do you think that person has a chance of being hired? No, because he's not serious about it. If you're serious about it and you know that's what you want to do, start making the right decisions. So making the right decisions is the biggest thing. Like I said, I have kids, I would tell them, choose your friends wisely. Hang out. If you hang out with kids that are making the right decisions, I'll give you so much freedom. As soon as you start hanging out with friends that are sketchy or making the wrong decisions, Dad starts focusing and pays a lot of attention. So hang out with the right people, make the right decisions. Best part of the job for me, as always, and you can probably tell from some of the photos, is interacting with our youth. You guys are the best. I say you guys, our youth, get a bad rap. You guys are a lot better than we were when I was your age, when we were your age. So that's the best part of my job, and in some way, if I could be a mentor, if I could help make you guys better, help give you guys a leg up, help give you guys some opportunity that you might not otherwise have. That's the best part of my job, and I don't know if anybody wants to add to it. Okay.
I know we're short on time.
I would say, like Chief, the best part of my job is just getting the opportunity to meet so many people and having what Chief and I learned last week at Coffee with the Cop is the lollipop moment. When you don't realize you impact somebody until down the line they let you know, hey, the interaction that we had really changed my perspective or changed my day. And that happens to me at least once a day at work. It's such a blessing to be able to work directly with the community, and I find it to be a privilege myself.
The academy was hard. I'm not gonna lie to you, as a female that wasn't in a lot of sports, unfortunately it was hard for me, the physical part. The rest of it was, I'm not gonna say cake, but it felt like it. That wasn't an issue for me. So if you are a female who wants to join the police department, I suggest you start training as of now. The run was a big thing for me. The rest of it, not as much. The run, only if I'm chased, really. But it's a 5-mile run, I think, at the end of it. So just, you know, it's not all at once. It's not all at once. Just get in shape. And then the other thing is working with people and getting to talk all day long. And guess what? I get paid for it. So it's an amazing part.
The academy was tough, but I've been in sports my whole life, and it's a big team atmosphere, so I really enjoyed that, helping each other out. But it was tough, but it wasn't like ridiculously tough, like you can't pass. Like if you just don't quit, like you'll be okay. Just you can't quit. That's the only thing. The best part about the job for me is like working with you guys and actually being able to help people. Like the moment where you can actually see that you help somebody out, and that's probably the best part.
Hi, my name is Janae. Do you have to do any extra schooling besides the academy to do what you do?
Schooling.
So the minimum qualifications to be a police officer, you have to have a high school diploma, you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to have a California driver's license. Beyond that, the more schooling, the more education you have, the more qualified you become, the more competitive you become to get hired, and then also once you're hired to get promoted. Most of the people, we have a command staff, which is the bosses. Most of them, including myself, we have master's degrees, advanced degrees, so college and then advanced degrees. But not all of our police officers have a 4-year degree. Yeah, you do get paid more also.
I'm gonna ask too, you guys try to keep your sidebar conversations, right? Because sometimes it's hard to hear the responses, right? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joel Garcia, and how many years did it take for you to become an officer?
The background process and all the hiring process was about a year, and then the academy was, I believe when I went, was about 26 weeks, but then I had 2 weeks before that as a pre-academy, and then 1 with the police department, with the Oxnard Police Department pre-academy. And after that you have post-academy, which is a couple weeks. Then for the next 4 to 6 months you ride with a training officer, and then you have 6 months where you're on your own, and finally you're off probation if you make it. Sometimes you can get extended if you don't get the right type of education while you're with your field training officer. So I didn't add all that up, but it's like about 2 years for the whole thing.
My name's Alex, and this one's for Officer Curtis. What are you planning to do after you're done being here after school?
I'm gonna go back to patrol. Go back and work patrol. Hopefully, I can get like a good beat somewhere in a good shift. Maybe on the south side. Back again to my old stomping grounds. Oh no, why you guys? My bad. No, back to patrol for a little bit at least, and then maybe after that try to detective or promote or something. I don't know. It's gonna be a long career, so I have time.
My name is Gabe Estrada. This is for Officer Whitney, Chief Whitney. Sorry. Does the city of Oxnard still need gang injunction?
Does the city of Oxnard still need a gang injunction?
That's a really good question. Thank you for that. The city has 2 gang injunctions, one against the biggest gang in the city. You guys probably know Colonia. The second one is against the second biggest gang in the city, Southside. We think, the police department thinks, and this is a very controversial issue because it does take away people's civil rights. When you have an injunction, it really limits what they can do, the activity they can do, so it's an outstanding question. We think it makes the city safer. The gang injunction, if you're an identified gang member by the police department, you can be placed on this injunction. It limits who you can associate with, the hours that you can be in what we call it a safety zone, what you can wear. We are very careful in how we apply it. We only apply it to the ones that are most active, the ones that are most violent, doing stuff out in the community, because we don't want them associating together. So we have a few hundred people in our city that are subject to those gang injunctions. We think it makes the city safer because you have, basically, if you're on the injunction, you cannot associate with other people that are on the injunction within the safety zone. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
My name is Kaylina, and I'm part of the Labs Academy. And my English class, we've been having a discussion lately if teachers are allowed to carry guns with a permit.
What are your thoughts on teachers being allowed to carry guns?
Another great question. Most police officers, most police chiefs are not super fond of civilians carrying guns, arming more and more people. So I haven't really thought too much about it from the perspective of teachers carrying guns. It takes, our officers get a lot of training with firearms, and it's not like television where you could just shoot one person and you can pinpoint them. There's a lot of responsibility and there's a lot of danger when you carry a gun. So it takes a lot of training. I personally, I don't think I would be in favor of that. Just kind of talking off the top of my head. But if it were to happen, whoever it was, whether teachers or anybody, they would need a lot of training to go with that.
Hi, I'm Jason Nelson, and I was wondering, what are some disqualifying factors that would prevent you from becoming a police officer?
Thank you.
Great questions. Glad you asked. I go and talk at Ventura College usually twice a year to criminal justice classes, and I talk about this all the time. One of them is marijuana within the last year. I should tell you guys, don't use drugs, right? But disqualifying, if you've used within the last 12 months, you're not going to get hired. That's marijuana. Other drugs, what we consider harder drugs, it's like within the last 7 years, harder drugs. If you have a felony conviction, you're not going to get hired. We look at every arrest. We look at, those are like the simple disqualifiers, but we look at the person as a whole. Sometimes, the old days, it used to be if you had a DUI, a drunk driving, you could never be a police officer. We look at that differently now. I look at it like, are we hiring somebody that has a problem with alcohol, or are we hiring somebody that made a mistake and learned from it? There's a big difference. And that's a big point to remember. We look at the entire individual, the adult. Is this person matured? Did this person make mistakes when he or she was younger and learn from them? If he or she can articulate that they learned from those mistakes, we'll give them a chance. But it's how you carry yourself, the decisions you've made, and whether or not you learn from them. So thank you.
And as the crime prevention detective, it would be not right of me to tell you this, that more jobs, more universities are actually looking at your social media, things that you post online. So be very aware that all that stuff is going to come back to you. You can't delete it. It's always there.
Hey, if you'd like to stick around, we'll be here for a little bit after the bell. Thank you so much. Let's give our panel a hand and thank them again.
I can't stop this.
It's over.